Melissa. All right, everyone. Great to see you all. Glad you all made it with the Iron Man. I hope you don't have any trouble getting here. If you would, in your bulletins this morning, please pull out your message notes for today and pull out a pen or pencil. I invite you to follow along. As we are in the second part of a message series that I have entitled Signs of a Healthy Faith, Fixing what is Broken. And so we're actually going through the book of Nehemiah. So if you brought your Bibles with you, I encourage you for that and I applaud you. Please turn to the book of Nehemiah before we begin. It's kind of a tough book to find, but the easiest way to find it, if you open your books in the middle, you're probably going to end up in the Psalms. If you hang a left at the Psalms, hang a quick left, you're going to come up to the book of Job. And then before Job, you're going to go up to the small book of Esther. And right before Esther, you're going to find the book of Nehemiah. So that's where we're at today, is Nehemiah. We're in the second chapter today. But let me just kind of catch you up to date in case you missed it 2 weeks ago, where we're at and what this is all about. So Nehemiah was written about 445 AD, so about 450 years before Jesus is born. And so what happened was, Nehemiah was an Israelite. He lived in Israel. He was one of God's people. And God's people in Israel at the time turned away from God. They turned away from Him. They stopped trusting Him. They started worshiping false idols. And so God is trying to get their attention. And so He allows another country, the Babylonians, which was led by a guy by the name of King Nebuchadnezzar, to come in and to destroy Jerusalem and destroy Israel, which he does. He burns it down to the ground. And King Nebuchadnezzar had this policy. Whatever country he attacked and defeated, he would take all of the people captive back to Babylon. So all of these people were taken back into captivity out of their country of Israel and into Babylon. Well, about 50 years later, there was another country called Persia, which is like today Iran, and they came in and they attacked Babylon and they defeated Babylon. And Persia had a whole different type of policy. They didn't want unhappy captives, so their policy was always to allow people to go back home and to live in their homeland. But the problem was, about 50 years passed. So by this point, not a lot of people went back because a lot of people had already started families and their kids were in school and they married Babylonians. You kind of get the picture, right? And so not a lot of people went back. Only a small few that we call a remnant returned. What happens is word comes to Nehemiah, who is at this point working for the king of Persia. He's living in a citadel, in a castle. And word comes from people from the old country, right? And Nehemiah says, how are things back in Israel? Oy vey! I don't know if they really said oy vey, but I just like to add that. Oy vey! It's bad! It's bad! You know, everything is just in ruins. And Nehemiah, we're told, opens up his heart and lets the pain come in. He says that he sat down and he wept. He sat down and he wept. He saw that his town was broken. His place that he lived in was broken. It was desolate. And he was moved to tears. He was going to fix it. What actually happens through God's power is in 52 days, he replaces the walls of Jerusalem, fixes up the city, what would normally take, some scholars say, 2 decades. Nehemiah did with God's help in 52 days. And so what we're looking at is things in our life that are broken. And we've been asking this question. It's on your notes. What's broken in your world that needs to be fixed? What's broken in your world that needs to be fixed? Because sometimes when things are really broken, right? And I'm not talking about a wall or a gate. 2 weeks ago I told you about the gate and the duck. but really broken, a relationship that's broken, a health issue, money issues. There's not always blueprints to fix that. But the thing is God loves you so much that he kind of gives you a blueprint in Nehemiah, because Nehemiah sets out the blueprints on how to fix things that are broken. Now here's the thing. Nehemiah 1:3-4 says this, "They said to me, things are not going well. For those who have returned to the province of Judah, they are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem has been torn down, and the gates have been destroyed by fire." When I heard this, I sat down and wept. In fact, for days I mourned and fasted and prayed to God of heaven. The first key to fixing what's broken is to face life head on. To open your hearts to the things that burden you. Now what we're going to do is I want to talk a little bit about who Nehemiah is. Because we've talked about Nehemiah, but actually we said he lives in the castle, right? He lives in the citadel with the king. But we actually never talked about what he is. I say that today. It's the very last verse of chapter 1. It's on your notes. It says, "In those days, I was the king's cupbearer." What is a cupbearer? A cupbearer is the king's wine steward. That's what he did. Every day, he would bring the king his wine, big glass. The king liked the healthy poor. And he would bring the king his wine. But before he brought the king his wine, the wine steward would do something first. He would drink it. He would take a sip and then give it to the king. Why would he take a sip of the wine? This isn't wine, by the way. I'm not going to waste good wine on a sermon prop. No offense. But why would the cup steward have to taste the wine? Two reasons. Number one, if you've ever been wine tasting, right? If you've ever been wine tasting and they open up a new bottle of wine, the wine steward, the one who's pouring the wine, what's the first thing he always does? Tastes it, right? Smells it and tastes it. Why? Because wine, unlike soda, unlike coffee, unlike water, wine is a living thing. It's alive. And it changes, and you go from being very good wine to very bad wine in a second. Now, this is a long time ago. They didn't even know about wine making like we do today, so they did know that wine could go bad. So the first thing the wine steward would do is I was expecting wine, and I got grape juice. He would taste the wine. Here's the second. There are a lot of people around who wanted to assassinate the king, including the king's own family members. Because if he died, someone else could take the throne. And so the wine steward would sip the wine to make sure it wasn't poisonous. To make sure it wasn't poisonous. Here's the thing. One of the things we need to know about the way God works is this. God generally doesn't use the superstars. He uses the peons. Now, the thing about Nehemiah was Nehemiah, we know a few things about him. Okay? One, he was a person of influence. Two, he was a person who could be trusted. But here's the third thing. He was expendable. It was better for him to die than the king to die. God uses everyday, ordinary peon people. If you were a star in high school, it's okay, God can still use you. But generally speaking, God uses everyday, ordinary people to get his message of salvation across. Look at yours truly. In high school and college, I was not by any means an academic whiz. That's one way to put it. It wasn't until seminary that I started getting my feet under me. And even, get this, the very first sermon I ever preached in seminary went 92 minutes. That's an hour and a half. An hour and a half long sermon. Folks, I preached the people into the kingdom of God, and I preached them out in one sermon. I don't know. Well, you know what, though, Eleanor? I'm glad because some people have told me today that my sermons are too long. Thank you, Pat. Now, you don't have to go looking around with accusatory eyes, wondering who this is. I'll tell you. My son Joel. A couple of weeks ago, I was sitting watching football, Joel's eating his chips. And he's like, Dad, that was a really long sermon. I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, the middle was okay. It was just the beginning and the end were really long, you know? God can use anybody. God can use anybody, right? He uses ordinary people to do amazing things. You don't have to be the best. The secret is you have to care the most. The secret is letting your heart open and care. Nehemiah, 1,000 miles away, he could have living in the king's mansion, drinking fine wine. Could have been like, oh, those poor people back in the homeland. Maybe I'll write them a nice check. Hope they do better. No. He sits down and cries. He says, I need to do something. Okay. But here's the thing. Look at what it says in your notes. Nehemiah chapter 2, verse 1. In the following spring, in the month of Nisan, during the 20th year of King Xerxes' reign, I was serving the king his wine. What we know, what scholars have figured out, is from the time Nehemiah heard this news that his friends in his home country was devastated, to the point that he actually says something to the king, it was about 4 months. For 4 months, Nehemiah waited. He waited. He did nothing. Oh, he did do something, but we'll talk about that in a second. Let's be honest. Waiting is the hardest part, isn't it? Waiting is the hardest part. A couple months ago, I was making dinner, and Sandy was working late at work, and she called me up, and she goes, Gary, it was one of those crazy weeks, like we barely saw each other like the whole week. And I said, okay, honey, I made dinner. She goes, I've got to work late. She goes, I'd like to actually eat supper with you tonight for once. Please don't eat before me so we can have dinner together. I said, okay. I cooked dinner. And I'm waiting. And I'm waiting. I'm getting hungry. And folks, when I get hungry, I get a little grumpy. Okay? I'm waiting. Okay, now I'm calling her up. Sandy, where are you? I'm on baseline. What is it with baseline, by the way? I'm stuck in baseline. Okay, well, I'm looking at the food, getting hungry. Waiting is hard. But that's just dinner. Sometimes real waiting is really difficult, isn't it? You go in to the doctors and they take some tests and they say, oh, we're kind of concerned about this. And then you wait for those test results to come back. That's hard. You wait. Maybe you have a friend and you really mess things up. And you call your friend up to apologize and say, let's work this out. Let's make this work. I'm so sorry I messed up. And they don't answer the phone. All they get is their voicemail. And you leave a message and say, please call me back. And you wait. And it's hard. But let me tell you, two things that waiting does. It's not on your notes, but you can scribble it down if you want. Number one, waiting induces us to pray with urgency. We begin to pray. Lord, please let these test results come back positive. Lord, please let this relationship be reconciled. Lord, please let this happen. And here's the second. It helps us to pray for an opportunity. It helps us to pray for an opportunity. I'll get to that in a second. So hold on. So 4 months ago, I was serving the king his wine. I'd never before appeared in his influence. Okay. In his presence. Nehemiah waited 4 months. Okay. And now all of a sudden he has his opportunity. See, here's the thing about waiting. Something else you need to know about waiting. But waiting is really so hard. Most of the time when we wait, we've prayed and we wait. And we kind of think it's like me waiting for Sandy to get home so I can eat. Sandy's just sitting in traffic on a baseline. Take a while to loop in. Right? And nothing's, but can I tell you something? It's the farthest thing from the truth. When you pray and you're waiting, well, you're waiting down here. God's at work up there. While we're waiting down here, God is working on the solution up there. It's not just empty time. It seems like empty time to us, but it's not. Why do we have to wait? Why? You know why? Because we're waiting on God's perfect timing. And more times than not, our timing doesn't line up with God's timing. And we have to wait for the time. But it doesn't mean that nothing is happening, because while we're waiting down here, God is working up there. So never ever think that your time waiting is wasted. It's not. God is doing the work. Nehemiah 2, verses 2 to 5. We're going to see it. Nehemiah uses his influence in prayer. Here we go. So the king asked me, big question, why are you looking so sad? You don't look sick to me. You must be deeply troubled. This is huge. Then I was terrified. That's huge. If you're in your Bibles, I want you to circle that word terrified. Why was Nehemiah terrified? Because in Nehemiah's day, if you were a wine steward, a cupbearer, anytime you were in the king's presence, you could never look downcast. You could never look troubled. You could never look sad. You had to always look happy and joyful and have a happy demeanor, a happy-go-lucky demeanor about you, and have a smile on your face. Regardless of what was going on in your life, you had to seem happy. If not, the king had two choices. If you were the cup steward and you came with a dour look on your face and you didn't look happy, and the king saw you, he could either, one, fire you and say, you're not a happy wine steward, you're fired, go out into the streets and beg or dig ditches, whatever you want to do, but you can't be in the castle anymore. And if he did that, you got away lucky. The other thing he could do is he put you to death. This wine steward isn't a happy man. Put him to death. The wine steward had to be happy all the time when serving the king. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's awfully harsh, right? I mean, you have to be happy in front of the king all the time with a smile on your face? Yeah. But I bet you can relate to this. I bet you anything, each and every one of you can relate to this and understand it. Let's imagine for a moment it's a special occasion, an anniversary, a promotion, a birthday. And you and your spouse or you and your friend, whoever it is, you go out to a really nice restaurant for dinner. And you order some wine and some appetizers. And you order your filet mignon and your steak comes and you're about to eat it and the waiter comes over and says, "How's your steak?" Did I tell you, well, I'll go ahead and eat. Did I tell you what happened to me yesterday? My car broke down. And I had to walk 4 miles to this job to feed you. And tonight I'm going to have to walk 4 miles home. I've got holes in my shoes. How's your steak? Oh, this must be nice because guess what I'm going to be eating ravioli out of a can with my cat tonight. I don't know why a cat, but I'm going to be eating ravioli tonight with a cat. And then my roommate, he's going to come and he's going to get sticky jelly all over the counters. I hate that. How are you going to feel? You're paying all this money for dinner and your waiter's there just grumbling. Eventually you're going to say, what? Go away. Let me eat my dinner in peace. Right? It's no different. Now, you won't put him to death. But this is what was going on. So he was terrified. Okay? But I replied, "Long live the king!" Well, that's a normal thing for Nehemiah to reply because if the king dies, guess what? It means he's already dead, right? So long live the king! Long live the king! How can I not be sad? For the city where my ancestors are buried is in ruins. And the gates have been destroyed by fire. And then the king asks an important question. In fact, it's a question that's asked throughout the Bible. Even Jesus asked it numerous times. What do you want? What do you want? How can I help you? Jesus is walking. Someone grabs him and he turns around and says, "What do you want? How can I help you?" And the king asked Nehemiah, "What do you want? How can I help you?" And it's interesting, Nehemiah prays. With a prayer to God to heaven, I replied, it's a flare prayer, right? Just really quick. Prayer, God, please be with me. But I want you to realize something, that for 4 months that Nehemiah's been waiting, guess what he's been doing? He's been praying. But he's probably been praying for an opportunity. More times than not, when you and I pray, we pray for a miracle. Well, we should be praying for an opportunity. Nehemiah said, "Lord, please, by your supernatural powers, rebuild Jerusalem." It's like me. I can go to bed last night after eating Indian food and say, "Lord, please let me wake up tomorrow morning looking like Mr. Atlas." Probably ain't going to happen. Right? But instead of praying for a miracle, he prays for an opportunity. And then it happens. And with a prayer to heaven, I replied, "If it pleases the king, and if you are pleased with me, your servant, send me to Judah to rebuild the city where my ancestors are buried." See, waiting teaches us to pray for an opportunity. Paul says this in 1 Thessalonians. You probably know this verse by heart. Pray continually. You might know it the old way. Pray without what? Ceasing. Without ceasing. When Paul says that, he's not talking about talking to God all the time. He's not talking about going around all day long. God, blah, 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 blah. God, blah, blah, blah. Have you ever been in a relationship with someone like that? And they just talk all the time, and never get a word in there, and you're like, shh, be quiet. Not that God says that to you, but it means keep the communication lines open with God. And when the moment came, Paul said, "God, what should I do? What should I do?" And it was time for action. You see, Nehemiah, as I said, did two things. He prayed and he prepared. It wasn't just praying. He was praying, but at the same time, he was also preparing. praying for an opportunity, praying that God would hear, and he was preparing. In other words, what he was saying is, he was saying, those 4 months, while he was waiting down here, while God is working up there, he started probably thinking to himself, well, if I was going to rebuild this city of Jerusalem, what would I need? And the moment comes. And the moment comes. Then the king, with the queen sitting beside me, asked me, how long will your journey take? And when will you get back? If it pleases the king, send me. So I set a time. I also said to him, if it pleases the king, may I have letters to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates so that they will provide a safe travel until I arrive in Judah. So he asked for 2 things. First, king, please let me go. I know I'm your wine steward. I enjoy tasting your wine. I've kept you alive this long, but allow me to go back. Second, it's a dangerous trip. You're the king. If you give me a letter, it'll get me safe. And may I have a letter to Ashford, keeper of the royal park, so that he will give me timber to make beams for the gates of the citadel. Here's the third thing. By the way, king, let me go. Give me a letter for safe travel. But you know what? There's one more thing. I need a lot of lumber to rebuild this city. King, do you know anyone with enough money who might have enough lumber to build a city? Oh, you! Can I have some of your timber from the forest to build it up? This is what he does. To make timber, to make beams for the gates of the citadel, the temple, the city. And because the gracious hand of God was on me, I want you to remember that, the king granted my request. So I went to the governors of the Trans-Euphrates and gave them the king's letters. The king does more than what he asks. Get this. The king also sent army officials and cavalry for my trip. He does more than he asks. More than he asks. When we're rebuilding what's broken in our life, whatever it is, we're getting over a busted relationship, we're dealing with finances, health issues, whatever it is, what happens is this. While we're waiting, God is working, we're praying. But a time comes when you need to jump in with both feet. You can't test your toe in the water. You have to take a jump of faith. I call it 20 seconds of courage. You know, it would have been very easy for Nehemiah to come up, and the king says, what's wrong? You look sad. And this was the opportunity he's been praying for, right? And to realize, wow, I better not do this. Oh, nothing, king, I have an upset stomach. And be done with it. But he took 20 seconds of courage, which changed everything. Years ago, I had a friend, and my friend, he'd call me up like every other night, and I love talking to my friends. I love talking to you guys on the phone, I really do. But my one friend called me up every other night and talked to me for about an hour and a half about the same thing. Do you know what that was? There was a gal at the gym he worked out at that he really liked. And he wanted to ask her out. Okay? And he kind of chatted with her, you know, casually, but that was it. And every night he'd get on the phone with me. Gary, she's so pretty, she's so nice. I want to ask her out. Frank, ask her out. Oh, I can't. Why not, Frank? If she says no, I'll be so embarrassed. I'll never be able to go back to that gym again. Frank, it's a $9 a month gym. There's 100 of them around you. You get a free t-shirt. Who cares? No, Gary, you don't understand. An hour and a half later, hang up. 2 days later, I get the same phone call from Frank. Oh, Gary, she looked radiant today. Ask her out. I can't. You know the story. We play the same script every night for about a month, every other night for about a month. Until one night, I was watching my favorite TV show. And, well, we're friends, right? We're friends. Can I be completely honest with you guys? I was having a glass of wine. Maybe two. Needless to say, my lips were loose. Okay? My lips were loose. And Frank was on about this girl at the gym. Oh, what am I going to do? And finally, I was trying to watch my show. And I finally said, Frank, take 20 seconds of courage. It's a mere moment. It'll be over before you know it. Just ask her out. Oh, we've only talked half. Who cares? 20 seconds of courage. It's a moment. If she says no, walk away, go to Crunch Fitness. Okay? Well, must have worked. Because a year and a half later, I was going to their wedding. Today, they've got like 3 kids. 20 seconds of courage. It's all it took Nehemiah. King, this is what I need. What's broken in your world that needs to be fixed? 20 seconds of courage. 2 last things before I'm done. I promise to be short. Joel, you can start timing me. 2 things. How was it that Nehemiah had 20 seconds of courage? How was it that Frank did? They understood something. They understood your vertical self. What is your vertical self? Vertical self. Most of the time, we define ourselves by people around us and things we've done, good or bad. And the way we see ourselves is the way other people tell us. And sometimes, you know what, if we've done things that are bad, that we regret, we let that define us for a lifetime. And that's the wrong way to see yourself. You need to see yourself as you really are. And that is your vertical self. You need to see yourself the same way God sees you. A holy, royal son or daughter of the Most High. A king's kid. A child of the redeemed. The reason that Jesus came to this world to die for you and be raised to life, so that now when God sees you, he's just beaming with joy. Think about this. There's nothing you could do to ever make God love you less. Nothing. And likewise, there's nothing you could ever do to make God love you more, because he loves you more than you could ever even fathom. See yourself that way. It doesn't matter what that girl said to Frank. She ended up becoming his wife. But even if she said, he still would have been the king's son. That's the first thing. Second is this, and that is, I don't know if you've noticed this, through 2 chapters of Nehemiah. But Nehemiah shows you the very heart of God. Did you see that yet? Nehemiah was living the high life in the king's mansion, drinking fine wine, eating fine meat. He had influence. He got to see the king every day. That's a lot of influence, right? Most people couldn't even see the king. Nehemiah got to see him daily. And he hears about people 1,000 miles away. And what does Nehemiah do? He drops everything and goes into their mess to fix it. And isn't that what Jesus does with us? He came out of his throne in heaven and into our mess to fix it, to make it right again, to make you new again. Nehemiah shows us who God is and just how much he loves you. And so to conclude, I want to ask you this, and that is, where are you at right now? Are you waiting? Are you praying? Are you preparing? or you have this 20 seconds of courage? Where are you at? Doesn't matter. Because God is with you. God loves you. And you are the King is strong. Amen.